Across the world, ancient legends tell the same impossible story. Giants walked among humans, from the Nephilim of the Bible to the Titans of Greek mythology, from enormous skeletons allegedly discovered beneath American soil, to mysterious ancient structures built with stones so massive that even modern engineers struggle to explain how they were moved. But what if these stories were not simply myths? For more than a century, strange reports have appeared in old newspapers claiming that gigantic human skeletons were discovered across America. Some were said to be over 7 feet tall, others allegedly 10, 12, or even 15 feet. Then, according to conspiracy theories, something strange happened. The evidence disappeared. Museums denied the discoveries. Archaeologists dismissed the stories. And the giants slowly vanished from history. So tonight, we follow a trail that stretches from ancient mythology to forbidden archaeological discoveries. Did an ancient race of giants once walk the earth? Or are these stories the result of exaggeration, hoaxes, and humanity's obsession with monsters? And if giants never existed, why do so many civilizations around the world tell the same story? The giants of ancient legends. Before the first cities were built, before kings ruled their kingdoms, before history was written into stone, there were stories. Stories passed from one generation to another. Stories whispered beside ancient fires. Stories carved into temple walls and preserved inside sacred texts. And among all the stories humanity has created, one mysterious figure appears again and again. The giant. Across thousands of years, separated by oceans, mountains, languages, and cultures, ancient civilizations told remarkably similar stories about enormous beings who once walked the earth. Some were described as powerful warriors. Some were children of gods. Some were monsters. Others were ancient rulers, destroyers, protectors, or beings who existed before humanity entered the world we know today. But why? Why did so many civilizations imagine creatures larger than ordinary human beings? Were giants simply symbols created by ancient storytellers? Were they exaggerated memories of unusually tall people? Or could these legends contain fragments of something much older, something humanity has forgotten? To search for an answer, we must travel back into the oldest stories ever told. And our journey begins with one of the most mysterious names in ancient religious tradition, the Nephilim. In the ancient Hebrew Bible, there is a brief but deeply mysterious reference to beings known as the Nephilim. The passage is short, but for centuries it has inspired debate, speculation, and countless theories. Who were they? Some interpretations describe them as mighty beings from an ancient age. Others connect them with fallen angels and human women. Some believe they were simply powerful warriors or unusually large men whose stories became legendary over time. But among alternative historians and conspiracy theorists, the Nephilim became something much more mysterious. A lost race of giants. According to these theories, the Nephilim were not merely symbolic figures. They were physical beings who once lived on Earth before a great catastrophe changed the world. Some believers connect them with stories of enormous humans. Others connect them with ancient structures built from massive stones. And some go even further. They believe that traces of these beings may have survived in ancient myths across the entire world. But the Nephilim are only the beginning. Travel west, across the ancient Mediterranean, and another world of giants emerges. Ancient Greece. To the Greeks, the world was not always ruled by the gods of Mount Olympus. Before Zeus, before Athena, before Apollo, there were older powers, the Titans. These enormous and powerful beings belonged to an ancient generation that existed before the Olympian gods. In Greek mythology, the Titans ruled during a distant and almost forgotten age. Then came a great war, the Titanomachy, a battle between the old gods and the new. The Titans were defeated, and a new order took control of the world. But Greek mythology contained another terrifying race, the Gigantes. Unlike the Titans, the Gigantes were often described as monstrous beings who fought directly against the gods. Their war became known as the Gigantomachy. Once again, the story followed a familiar pattern. An ancient race, powerful beings, a great conflict, and the destruction or disappearance of those who came before. Could this simply be mythology? Of course. But to some researchers, the pattern itself is interesting, because the same idea appears again, and again, and again. Travel north into the cold landscapes of ancient Scandinavia. There, Norse mythology tells of the Jotnar, the giants. In the Norse imagination, giants were not always simple monsters. They were ancient forces connected with chaos, nature, mountains, storms, ice and fire. Some were enemies of the gods. Others were connected to them through family, alliances, and ancient relationships. The world of the gods and the world of the giants were deeply connected. And once again, the giants represented something ancient, something powerful, something that existed before the current order of the world. This idea appears to repeat throughout mythology. The present world belongs to humans. But before humanity, something else was here. Ancient races, forgotten beings, gods, monsters, and giants. But perhaps the most fascinating stories can be found across the oceans. In the Americas, ancient traditions also contain stories of enormous beings. Various indigenous cultures told stories involving giant creatures, powerful ancestors, supernatural beings, and enormous humans who lived during distant ages. Some stories describe giants as dangerous and destructive. Others describe them as ancient inhabitants who existed before the people of the present world. Again, the same question emerges. Why does humanity keep returning to the image of the giant? Is it possible that these stories developed independently? Most likely, yes. After all, the idea of a creature larger than a human is one of the most powerful images in storytelling. A giant represents strength, fear, nature, chaos, and the unknown. To an ancient person standing before a mountain, a giant might have been the perfect symbol. To explain a thunderstorm, imagine a giant in the sky. To explain enormous footprints or strange bones, imagine creatures larger than humans. And ancient people did encounter enormous bones. Long before modern science understood dinosaurs, mammoths, and prehistoric animals, people occasionally discovered massive skeletons buried beneath the earth. Imagine finding a gigantic bone without knowing what a mammoth was. What would you think? Perhaps you would imagine an enormous human. Perhaps you would create a story, and that story would be passed from generation to generation. Over centuries, it might become a legend, and eventually, a giant. But alternative theories offer another possibility. What if the legends did not begin with imagination? What if ancient people really encountered individuals who were significantly taller and stronger than the people around them? Throughout history, unusually tall humans have existed. In a small ancient community where the average person might have been much shorter than people today, an exceptionally tall warrior could have appeared almost supernatural. A man standing far above everyone else could become a legend. Generations later, his story might grow. He was tall. Then he became enormous. Then he became a giant. And eventually, he became something no longer human. But there is another theory, one that takes us much deeper into the world of mystery. What if ancient legends are fragments of a forgotten history? According to alternative historians and conspiracy theorists, humanity may have forgotten entire chapters of its past. Civilizations may have risen and disappeared. Knowledge may have been lost. Entire populations may have vanished after catastrophic floods, volcanic eruptions, climate change, or other disasters. And perhaps the stories of giants are distorted memories of one of those lost worlds. A world that existed before recorded history. A world destroyed so completely that only myths remained. Imagine it. A civilization disappears. The cities collapse. People scatter. Thousands of years pass. The survivors tell stories about what happened. Those stories are repeated, changed, exaggerated. The powerful become gods. The kings become giants. The ancient world becomes mythology. And eventually, no one remembers where the stories began. There is no scientific evidence proving that a race of gigantic humans once ruled the earth. But the legends remain. They survived. They crossed centuries. They traveled through religions and civilizations. And somehow the giant continues to appear. From the Nephilim, to the Titans, to the Gigantes, to the giants of Norse mythology, to ancient stories told across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Different names, different cultures, different worlds, but a strangely familiar image. Something enormous, something ancient, something that existed before us. Perhaps that is the real mystery. Not whether giants were 10 feet tall, not whether ancient skeletons are hidden inside secret vaults, but why humanity has been telling stories about giants for thousands of years. Maybe giants are simply myths. Maybe they are symbols created by the human imagination. Maybe they were inspired by fossils, unusually tall individuals, natural disasters, and the terrifying power of nature. Or maybe, buried somewhere beneath thousands of years of history, there is a truth we have not yet discovered. Because legends rarely appear from nothing. Sometimes they are born from fear, sometimes from imagination, and sometimes they may begin with something real, something seen by human eyes, something so extraordinary that the people who witnessed it could not explain what they had found. So they told a story, and that story survived for thousands of years. But legends alone cannot prove that giants ever existed. Stories can change, myths can grow, and imagination can transform ordinary people into gods and monsters. So if we want to move beyond ancient legends, we must search for something more, something physical, something buried beneath the earth, something that can be measured, something that cannot simply disappear into mythology. And this is where the story becomes even stranger, because throughout the history of America, newspapers and explorers have reported something extraordinary. Massive human skeletons, bones supposedly belonging to people far larger than ordinary humans. Discoveries that, according to some conspiracy theories, were later ignored, dismissed, or mysteriously forgotten. And now we must ask the next question. Were these reports evidence of something impossible? Or were they nothing more than exaggeration, misunderstanding, and deception? Because somewhere between ancient legend and modern archaeology lies one of the most controversial mysteries of all. The mystery of the giant skeletons. The mystery of giant skeletons. For thousands of years, giants existed only in stories. They appeared in ancient scriptures. They fought gods in mythology. They ruled forgotten worlds in legends passed from one generation to another. But what happens when the story of giants appears to leave the world of mythology and enters the modern world? What happens when newspapers begin reporting discoveries of enormous human skeletons? Skeletons allegedly found beneath ancient burial mounds. Bones discovered by farmers digging into the earth. Strange graves containing remains said to belong to people far larger than ordinary humans. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, reports like these appeared in newspapers across the United States. Some stories described skeletons measuring 7 or 8 feet tall. Others made even more extraordinary claims. 9 feet, 10 feet, and sometimes even larger. To the people reading those newspapers, the discoveries must have seemed incredible. Could the giants of ancient legends actually have been real? Could America itself once have been home to an ancient race of enormous humans? Or was something else happening? To understand the mystery, we must travel back to a time when much of America's ancient landscape was still unexplored. Long before modern cities covered the land, explorers, farmers, and archaeologists began discovering something unusual across the United States. Ancient burial mounds, large earthen structures rising from the landscape. Some were shaped like hills. Others formed enormous geometric patterns. Some covered ancient graves. These structures had been created by indigenous cultures thousands of years ago. But during the 19th century, many of these sites were excavated with methods that would be considered unacceptable today. Farmers opened burial sites. Treasure hunters searched for artifacts. Amateur archaeologists removed objects without proper documentation. And newspapers were always searching for an extraordinary story. This created the perfect environment for a mystery. A skeleton is discovered. Someone estimates its height. The story is passed from person to person. A newspaper prints the report. Another newspaper repeats it. Details begin to change. A tall skeleton becomes an enormous skeleton. An unusual grave becomes evidence of a lost civilization. And before long, a giant has been born. But were all of these reports simply inventions? That is where the mystery becomes more complicated. Historical newspapers really did publish stories describing unusually large skeletons. Reports appeared in different parts of the country: Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York, Tennessee, and many other states. Some discoveries were connected to ancient burial mounds. Others were allegedly found in caves or remote areas. The descriptions varied dramatically. In some cases, the skeletons were described as only slightly taller than average. In others, they were described as nearly impossible in size. And that raises an important question. If a genuine 10-foot human skeleton had been discovered, where is it now? Where are the bones? Where are the photographs? Where are the scientific records? Why is there no universally accepted physical evidence proving that an ancient race of giant humans once lived in North America? This absence of evidence became the foundation of one of the most famous conspiracy theories surrounding ancient giants. According to believers, the evidence did exist, but it was hidden. Some conspiracy theories claim that museums and scientific institutions collected the remains and then removed them from public view. Others claim that evidence was deliberately destroyed because the existence of giants would challenge the accepted understanding of human history. One institution is frequently mentioned in these stories: the Smithsonian Institution. According to the conspiracy theory, the Smithsonian discovered or collected giant skeletons and later concealed them from the public. The theory has spread for decades through books, documentaries, websites, and social media. But there is a major problem. No credible evidence has established that the Smithsonian secretly destroyed or hid a collection of giant human skeletons. Many stories supporting the theory can be traced to unreliable sources: exaggerated newspaper reports, fictional accounts, or modern internet hoaxes. Yet, for conspiracy theorists, the lack of evidence becomes part of the mystery. They ask a simple question: if giant skeletons never existed, why were there so many stories about them? The answer may lie in the strange world of 19th century journalism. America during the 1800s was very different from the world we know today. Newspapers competed fiercely for readers. Sensational stories attracted attention. Strange discoveries sold papers. There were no modern standards requiring journalists to verify every claim before publication. A local rumor could quickly become a headline. An unusual bone could be misidentified. A measurement could be exaggerated. And sometimes, a completely fictional story could appear beside real news. This period also saw enormous interest in archaeology. Ancient mounds fascinated the public. Many Americans did not understand who had built them. Some people refused to believe that indigenous cultures could have created such complex structures. As a result, strange theories began to emerge. Perhaps the mounds were built by a lost civilization. Perhaps they were created by an unknown race. Perhaps they were built by giants. This idea became deeply embedded in popular culture, and every unusual discovery seemed to strengthen the legend. But archaeology tells a different story. Over time, researchers developed a much clearer understanding of the ancient cultures responsible for America's monumental earthworks. The mounds were created by sophisticated indigenous societies over thousands of years. They did not require a lost race of giants. They required something equally impressive: human intelligence, organization, engineering, and generations of knowledge. But even with this explanation, the mystery did not disappear. Because some stories were difficult to trace, old newspaper articles remain. Reports continue to circulate. And in some cases, the original discoveries can no longer be examined. The bones are gone. The locations have changed. The mounds have been destroyed. The people who made the discoveries died more than a century ago. And without the original evidence, separating truth from exaggeration becomes almost impossible. This is where the story enters an even darker territory, the world of missing evidence. Imagine a farmer in the year 1870 digging into the earth. He discovers a strange burial site. Inside, he finds bones. He believes they are enormous. A local reporter arrives. The story is printed. The newspaper claims that the skeleton belonged to a giant. But no trained scientist examines the remains. No precise measurements are recorded. No photographs are taken. The bones are later damaged, buried again, or simply lost. 150 years pass, and all that remains is the story. Could something like this explain many of the reports? Possibly, but conspiracy theories refuse to let the mystery end there. Some believers claim that giant skeletons continued to be discovered throughout the 20th century. They point to photographs circulating online, images showing enormous skulls, massive femurs, excavation sites with gigantic human remains. At first glance, some of these photographs appear convincing, but many famous images have been exposed as manipulated pictures, digital artwork, or deliberate hoaxes. The internet created a new generation of giant legends. Unlike 19th century newspapers, however, modern technology allowed stories to spread around the world in seconds. A single altered image could convince millions of people. And once the image entered the mythology of the internet, it became almost impossible to remove. But even after the fake photographs are removed from the story, one question remains. Why do people want to believe in giants? Perhaps because the possibility is too fascinating to ignore. The discovery of a real giant skeleton would change more than archaeology. It would change our understanding of history. It would force scientists to ask whether another human population once existed alongside our ancestors. It would challenge everything we believe about the limits of the human body. And perhaps most importantly, it would prove that ancient legends may contain more truth than we imagine. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so far, no scientifically verified evidence has demonstrated that an ancient race of 10-foot or 15-foot humans once lived on Earth. There have been unusually tall people throughout history. Medical conditions can cause extraordinary growth. Some humans have reached remarkable heights. But this is very different from discovering an entire lost race of giants. And yet, the stories refuse to disappear, because beneath the conspiracy theories, beneath the manipulated photographs, and beneath the sensational newspaper headlines, there is still something genuinely mysterious. Humanity has always been fascinated by what lies beneath the ground. Ancient tombs, forgotten cities, lost civilizations, buried secrets. Every discovery forces us to reconsider what came before us. And sometimes history surprises us. Civilizations once believed to be myths have later been rediscovered. Ancient cities have emerged from beneath forests and deserts. Lost tombs have been found centuries after their locations were forgotten. So perhaps the fascination with giant skeletons is not really about proving that giants existed. Perhaps it is about something deeper, the possibility that history is incomplete, that beneath our cities, forests, and fields, there are still discoveries waiting to be made, and that humanity may know far less about its ancient past than we believe. But if the skeletons cannot provide a clear answer, perhaps we should look elsewhere. Perhaps the clues are not buried inside ancient graves. Perhaps they are standing in plain sight. Massive stones, enormous monuments, ancient structures built with blocks weighing dozens or even hundreds of tons. Structures that have survived earthquakes, wars, and thousands of years. And this leads us to the final question. If giants were never real, how did ancient civilizations move stones that appear almost impossible to lift? Did ancient humans possess forgotten engineering knowledge? Did lost civilizations develop technologies that disappeared? Or, as conspiracy theorists believe, were ancient giants once involved in building the monuments that still stand around the world? The answer may lie within the stones themselves. And in the final part of our journey, we will enter the world of impossible megaliths, lost civilizations, forbidden history, and the ancient giants that some believe have been erased from the story of humanity. the lost giants and the history we may have forgotten. If the giants of ancient legends were only myths, and if the mysterious reports of giant skeletons cannot provide definitive proof, then perhaps we have been looking in the wrong place. Perhaps the answer is not hidden inside old newspapers. Perhaps it is not buried inside forgotten graves. Perhaps the evidence, if any exists at all, has been standing in front of us for thousands of years. Across the world, ancient civilizations built structures so enormous that they continue to inspire wonder even today. Massive stone blocks, ancient walls, megalithic temples, enormous monuments. Some stones weigh dozens of tons. Others weigh hundreds. They were cut, transported, lifted, and placed with remarkable precision. And thousands of years later, many of these structures are still standing. The question is simple. How did ancient people do it? Mainstream archaeology provides many answers. Ancient civilizations possessed extraordinary knowledge of engineering, mathematics, construction, organization, and labor. They used ramps, ropes, levers, rollers, wooden sledges, human strength, animal power, and, perhaps most importantly, time. Some of the greatest monuments on Earth were not built in a single year or even a single generation. They were the result of thousands of workers, carefully organized over decades. Yet for many people, the mystery remains. Because when standing before an enormous stone block, it is easy to ask, could human beings really have moved this? And that question has opened the door to countless alternative theories. Some believe ancient civilizations possessed lost technology. Others believe advanced knowledge disappeared after a catastrophic event. And then there is one of the strangest theories of all. What if giants helped build them? According to some alternative historians, the enormous stones found at ancient sites may be evidence of a forgotten race of physically larger beings. A race stronger than ordinary humans. A race capable of lifting stones that would seem impossible for smaller people. A race whose memory survived only through mythology. The giants. But if such beings once existed, where did they live? Where are their cities? Where are their tools? Where are their skeletons? Where is the undeniable evidence? This is the problem at the heart of the ancient giants' mystery. The stories are everywhere. The theories are fascinating. The monuments are real. But the physical evidence connecting them to an actual race of giants remains unproven. And yet, the legends continue. Perhaps because many ancient civilizations tell a strangely similar story. Before the world as we know it, there was another age, an older age, an age of gods, heroes, monsters, and giants. In Greek mythology, the Titans existed before the Olympian gods. In Norse mythology, the giants belonged to an ancient world connected to the origins of existence itself. In biblical traditions, mysterious beings such as the Nephilim were associated with an ancient age. And in countless other traditions, enormous beings appear before humanity enters the world of the present. Could this simply be a pattern created by the human imagination? Perhaps. Human beings have always looked backward and imagined that the ancient world was greater, more powerful, and more mysterious than the present. Every civilization has a forgotten past, and when history disappears, imagination fills the empty spaces. A ruined city becomes the home of gods. An ancient king becomes a giant. A powerful warrior becomes a supernatural being. Over thousands of years, history becomes legend, and legend becomes myth. But what if some myths contain fragments of real events? This is where the idea of forbidden history begins. Throughout human history, knowledge has been lost. Entire civilizations have disappeared. Languages have vanished. Cities have been buried beneath deserts. Forests have swallowed ancient temples. Earthquakes have destroyed entire settlements. Floods have erased coastal communities. And countless generations have lived and died without leaving behind written records. What we call history is only the part of the past that survived. Everything else is missing, and that is a terrifying thought. How much of humanity's story has already been forgotten? Perhaps ancient people knew things that we no longer understand. Perhaps civilizations existed that have not yet been discovered. Perhaps beneath the forests of South America, the deserts of the Middle East, and the mountains of Asia, there are still cities waiting to be found. And every new discovery has the power to change our understanding of the past. But could one of those discoveries reveal something even more extraordinary? A forgotten population, a lost civilization, or perhaps evidence that the legends of giants were based on something real? Alternative historians often point to massive ancient construction projects. They ask why ancient civilizations would use stones weighing hundreds of tons. Why build with materials so difficult to move? Why create monuments that required enormous amounts of labor? Perhaps they suggest the builders possessed knowledge that has been lost. Perhaps ancient engineering was more sophisticated than we realize. And perhaps the people who built these monuments were not exactly like us. This is where speculation becomes increasingly mysterious. Imagine a world thousands of years before recorded history. Imagine civilizations rising and falling long before the first known empires. Imagine catastrophic events destroying entire populations. Floods, volcanic eruptions, climate change, earthquakes, wars. Generation after generation disappears. The survivors carry stories of the world that existed before. But as centuries pass, those stories begin to change. The ancient rulers become gods. The warriors become giants. The lost cities become Atlantis. And eventually, history becomes mythology. Could the stories of giants have emerged in this way? Could they be distorted memories of ancient people who were physically different from those around them? Perhaps unusually tall populations once existed. Perhaps powerful rulers were remembered as larger than life. Perhaps prehistoric animal bones inspired stories of enormous humans. Or perhaps the truth is something we have not yet considered. One of the most fascinating things about ancient history is that certainty is often impossible. We know far more today than our ancestors did, but we still do not know everything. Archaeological discoveries continue to reveal ancient cities, forgotten cultures, and lost civilizations. The human story is still being written, and perhaps that is why the legend of giants refuses to die. Because giants represent the possibility that history is incomplete. They represent the unknown chapters, the missing evidence, the civilizations that vanished before anyone could write their story down. But there is another side to this mystery. The danger of believing that every unexplained monument must have been built by something other than ordinary human beings. Ancient people were capable of extraordinary achievements. They understood mathematics, astronomy, architecture, engineering. They organized massive workforces and built monuments that survived for thousands of years. The fact that we do not immediately understand every detail of their methods does not mean giants built their cities. Sometimes the real answer is even more impressive. Human beings did it, with knowledge, with creativity, with patience, and with generations of effort. Yet the mystery remains, because there are still questions. There are still undiscovered sites. There are still ancient structures whose stories are incomplete. And somewhere beneath the surface of the earth, discoveries are still waiting. Perhaps one day, archaeologists will uncover a civilization that changes everything we know about human history. Perhaps they will discover new evidence about ancient migration, a lost culture, a forgotten city, or an entirely new chapter in the human story. But until that day, the giants remain suspended between two worlds, the world of myth and the world of possibility. There is no confirmed scientific evidence that a race of enormous humans once walked the earth. There are legends, there are old newspaper reports, there are mysterious stories, there are conspiracy theories, and there are monuments that continue to inspire wonder. But there is still no skeleton that has been scientifically verified as belonging to a 10-foot ancient human. No ancient city has been proven to belong to a race of giants. No DNA evidence has confirmed their existence. And perhaps that absence is the greatest mystery of all. Because if giants truly existed, why did they disappear so completely? Why did they leave behind stories but no undeniable proof? Did they die in some ancient catastrophe? Did they slowly disappear through evolution? Were they absorbed into ordinary human populations? Or were they never real in the first place? Perhaps the answer lies in the way humans remember the past. We do not remember history exactly. We transform it. We tell stories. We exaggerate. We add heroes and monsters. We turn ordinary people into legends. And over time, those legends become immortal. Perhaps that is what happened to the giants. Maybe they were once real people whose stories became larger with every generation. A tall warrior became a giant. A powerful ruler became a god. An ancient civilization became a lost world. And a forgotten memory became a legend. Or perhaps, somewhere in a place we have not yet explored, beneath an ancient mountain, inside a sealed chamber, or buried beneath the ruins of a civilization that has not yet been discovered, there is still something waiting, a piece of evidence, a skeleton, an artifact, a discovery capable of changing everything. Until then, the giants remain one of history's greatest shadows. They stand between fact and fiction, between archaeology and mythology, between science and conspiracy, and perhaps that is why we continue searching for them. Because deep down, we all want to believe that the ancient world was more mysterious than we imagine. That beneath the ground, there are still secrets waiting. That history is not finished. And that somewhere beyond the limits of what we know, the impossible may still be hiding. The giants may have been myths. They may have been symbols. They may have been the result of imagination, exaggeration, and forgotten history. But one thing is certain. For thousands of years, humanity has refused to forget them. Their names have changed. Their stories have changed. Their shapes have changed. But they remain. The Nephilim, the Titans, the Gigantes, the giants of the north, the forgotten beings of ancient legends. Perhaps they never walked the earth. Or perhaps we simply have not found the final piece of the puzzle yet. And until that day comes, the question will remain. Did ancient giants truly exist? Or are we searching for something that humanity created long ago, and then spent thousands of years trying to prove was real?